Good morning, YouTube. Today is Thursday, the 10th of March 2022, and I will be making a small weather video. So why am I making this video? Because we are going into a negative phase in the Arctic oscillation, and this will have repercussions on the weather, but also because the polar vortex is not located where it used to be over the Arctic, so it moved again towards Siberia, and this is actually unusual, and it will have its effects. But we also have, and this is probably the effect of this, a stratospheric warming. It's not really a major one, but it's there nonetheless. And these three factors, the negative Arctic oscillation, the warming in the stratosphere, and the polar vortex located where it shouldn't be, will have its effect, and I will show this in a moment. But first, let's take a look at the polar vortex and what it means to be located over here. So this will have an effect on the jet stream, because the jet stream has a tendency to follow the polar vortex, but now it is located almost over Siberia, so we will have wild swings, as you can see over here. Stretches from Spain all the way to the Arctic. Then you have, of course, this dip, because it's an amplitude, and here we already see distortions, so we will have extreme weather. In some parts there will be warming events, heat waves, and in other parts cold waves. This is inevitable when the polar vortex is located where it shouldn't be, and this time this is a lot. I mean, if we would put a distance, I mean almost 1,000 kilometers, and as you can see, it explains why the jet stream does these wild swings, but also because the Arctic oscillation becomes negative. So which one causes which effects? I would say because the polar vortex moves away from the Arctic becomes negative. And we have this minor warming event in the stratosphere. So what does this mean weather-wise? Let's just take a look again at these oscillations. In a positive phase, we have a stronger polar vortex. And this is what we have seen in previous weeks when these storms battered the UK and parts of Europe. This is because the Arctic oscillations became briefly positive. Now we are moving actually into a negative phase. This means that the polar vortex will slow down, and thus the jet stream will follow the trend. And when it slows down, the amplitude increases of the jet stream, and this means we will have wild swings in weather. Some parts warmer, some parts colder. When we look at the temperature, and I zoom this a little bit in, let's go to the beginning. This is actually a forecast from the Planetary Analyzer website. We can already see that warm air, take a look at this, will be flowing and following the jet. Let me just go, yes, I think Wednesday and Thursday of next week, we are forecasted to have 17 degrees, which is a lot. This is a positive anomaly, but not record-breaking. So what's causing this? Well, basically, they are forecasting what I just said. The jet stream will be doing wild swings to increase in amplitude, going higher than usual, but also lower. And this is what's causing this push of warm air coming from Africa all the way to Europe. Now when we put the temperature anomaly, it is actually clearly, we can see it. So here you have these cold parts, colder than usual. That's because the heat gets pushed all the way, and you see from here it goes from Africa all the way to Europe. We also have positive temperatures over the Arctic, and this is inevitable because essentially the polar vortex keeps all that cold in the Arctic, but when it moves too much away from the Arctic, then because the jet stream tends to enter actually in the Arctic where it shouldn't be, warm air will be entering the Arctic basically, and cold air from the Arctic will be sucked, because when you see the polar vortex, you have just to imagine the opposite direction to know at the bottom, at the surface, the winds will blow in the opposite direction, because warm air actually enters in this direction, but in this at the surface it does the opposite of that. So warm air will be pushed all the way to Europe, but at the same time cold air will find a way to Siberia, to Russia, and so pushing its way all the way. When we look at the climate reanalyzer, let me just put the temperature to show it to you in perspective. When we go further, we can see this clearly as this cold becomes closer to Europe. Now, of course, this is only a forecast, but forecast that probably takes into consideration everything that I told you so far. So what can we expect? We can expect warm weather over Europe in the coming days, or next week also, as I've shown it. In fact, I think just Wednesday and Thursday, as you can see, will be the warmest days ahead. We can also see an influx of cold air afterwards, and this is because we have a negative phase of the Arctic oscillation, and this means cold air will be pouring from Russia and going more westwards to Europe, as westerlies gets pushed away. These winds that come from the ocean, these warm winds, will be pushed away by the cold air. So will we have a cold wave afterwards? It's hard to tell. If I look at the predictions by just looking at the geopotential height anomalies, I think we could have positive values in the coming weeks, but it remains to see what happens in April. For now, spring will probably start a bit warm in some parts of Europe, colder in Russia, but what happens next remains to be seen, and it's all related to the polar vortex. So we have to see if the polar vortex actually regains its place over the Arctic and whether it becomes positive again. In time we will see, but this is roughly what I wanted to show about the weather. I thought this to be interesting. And another thing, as you can see, the polar vortex also influences the distribution of the ozone in the upper layers of the atmosphere, and this will also have an effect on the weather. Yes, another thing as to why this is happening, because these movements are happening more frequent. This is, for example, a map, a historical map that shows actually the movement of the magnetic north, and you can see that it moves actually a lot over these past almost 2000 years. So this is evidently cyclical, probably related to solar activity or Earth's alignment. And if you look actually at the recent movement, it goes exactly, as you can see, where the polar vortex is located, where it wants to move. You see, exactly to that place. So in my opinion, this has to do with the wandering north magnetic, the magnetic north going to Siberia. This is probably the reason of that. So, yes, another thing that I want to show, but this is not weather related. And by the way, if you haven't done already, I strongly suggest that you subscribe to my channel and that you turn the notifications on. This way you won't miss any content, any future content. Where is it? Yes, here it is. So what I wanted to show is that the planets, and this is now a little bit of space weather, talking about planetary alignments. I haven't drawn the lines because I want to do this quickly. I just want to show that most planets are packed together in one side of the sun, and we see the tendency towards alignments. I mean, look at this. You can almost draw a straight line over here. You can almost draw one over here, one over here. So there is a lot of torque which is being exercised on the sun, and this will actually increase activity of the sun. But the date that I want to go to Let me just play it a little bit. I think it's in May. Yes, over here. So we have actually clear alignments on this date around the 22 of May. And this will have an impact on solar activity. I can't say how much, but look, you can draw a line over here. This is an alignment, this is an alignment, this is an alignment, and even this is kind of an alignment. So this will definitely have an impact, and I think the strongest point where the torque will be exercised, it's on the departing limb from the west side of the sun over here, because here we have this and this. This will definitely, so if a sunspot is over here, an active one, it will increase in activity. We also could see the release of filaments if there is a filament on this side of the sun, and in general CMEs, etc., solar flares. This remains to be seen, because this is a two-dimensional representation of these planetary alignments, but it doesn't show how they actually stack up on the ecliptic, because they can also be aligned vertically. So this might be a strong alignment or not. It all depends on where the planets are actually in the ecliptic. If they are closer, if every single one of them is closer to the ecliptic of the sun at the same distance, more or less, then the alignments will be strong. If it's the opposite, then this doesn't mean much, just a slicing uptick in solar activity. So time will tell, we will see in a month or two. So we almost arrive at the end of the video, and as usual I will cite a philosophical quote, but also something else, so stay tuned. So the philosophical quote this time is 64, I think. Yes, a man cannot possess anything that is better than a good wife, or anything that is worse than a bad one. So there you have it. When you choose carefully, because you will be stuck the rest of your life with your wife, and if it's a bad one, that's a bummer. So the last item that I want to show is some predictions, and this is not to scare people. In light of the current, how do I say this, the current circumstances with Russia and Ukraine. And I find it actually interesting, because in those predictions, the European predictions that predict World War III, every single one of them, excuse me, says Russia will be the source of World War III, but it will only happen after a communist revolution takes place. And there are some things that have yet to happen, that haven't happened yet. It will be in a time when there will be general discontent for religion, when moral beliefs will be gone, when there will be no difference between rich and poor. So it will be a different time of this era entirely, and I think this might happen in a few decades, but I can't tell you when. It might even happen 100 years from now. But strangely enough, they all predict that Russia will one day attack the West, and so usher World War III, and with this destroy the world. But that will only happen after revolutions take place, and I don't think that it's now, but I posted this anyway for those interested of reading them. Who knows, you might, if you don't have anything to do. Okay, so this is the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Again, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe either, otherwise you will miss any future content that I post. And I guess we see each other next time. Bye bye everyone.